that we might benefit from questioning?
I think that we just need to be aware that we can't rely completely on these things to express what we are trying to say. We have to be careful and conscious that these things limit us. And we have to think of ways that we can break those limits or cross those limits.
Right. So that's, for the most part, I guess the most formal part of our presentation. And now we'd like to open it back up to the group and consider the 3 questions that we asked. Leah, do you want to read the questions or refresh our memory?
Yes, I can. Yes, that would be good. So our first question was back with Tamara when she was pleading with Titus, and we saw that Titus's doctrines and Titus's rigid beliefs were creating conflict. So the question was, what are the doctrines and beliefs today that prevent us from connecting and instead create conflict? And what rigid beliefs do we hold to potentially? And our second question was, after Titus had been pleading with the tribunes for his son's sake, and we saw how his sorrow and his pain went unheard, and we wanted to ask, what is it about our society that gets in the way of making these empathetic or these emotional connections? What things prevent us from being able to express our pain? And then finally, we had our biggest question of, is it possible to express our pain with the media that we have, the different forms of media that we have available to us? Can we rely on these things, and in what ways do we rely on these things without really realizing the limits that they may cause for us? And how do we express our emotions through these? How do they fully express us?
Great. So what do we think?
Well, when you talk about rigid beliefs, I'm thinking of 3 days of confirmation hearings of the Tony Barrett, not to get too topical.
No, but that's the whole point.
Good. Okay. So, here is this person has a record of a particular set of doctrines, anti-abortion, even anti-in vitro fertilization. And so there's no communication between her and people who disagree with her in the hearing. People just make speeches at each other and nothing happens.
And in some ways, that's even a more general problem in our current political moment. Thank God this will be over in a few weeks, and who knows what happens after. But there's the way in which in a heightened political climate, there's this inability or this unwillingness or inability to communicate across differences.
Yeah, I want everybody to have health insurance. You're a socialist. Done.
So how then do you engage in, or do you attempt to engage in productive conversations across that difference, across that real or perceived divide? That is, in other words, how could you engage in a conversation with someone on the other side of that particular issue?
Well, I noticed one thing that Tamara did that Titus didn't, and that was that, and we talk about this sometimes in criminal justice, she used his name in an effort to me to connect to a person and not a category, and he never used her name. There's a lot of names used at the end of the play when amongst the friends, but in the pleading, so I think, that says something too about trying to make a personal connection with somebody instead of a category.
That's powerful.
I think we see that too. Like, Tamara is trying to make this connection with the person, and she's bringing out all these things about Titus, while Titus is just talking about his doctrines and his beliefs and his the rituals of his society. He's not bringing the people into it so much as his world. And I think that it has, like Tamara's doing it, it has to be more about the people.
Ruth, if I could ask you, what is it about the naming itself, like in terms of, I guess, the psychological or the rhetorical effect of addressing someone by their name?
Well, it's kind of like the same thing we talk about too, about looking people in the eye when you talk with them and trying to make a connection. So I don't know if you do this in class, but the idea of, like in class, I try to learn my students' names. I make a big effort at that. And part of that is because I don't want them to feel like they're anonymous in that little community. And that's part of the idea of you're a part of a community. So there's social control obligations and responsibilities that we all have to each other. But if you're anonymous in a big group, no name, you don't have that so much.
Was someone else about to say something?
I was just thinking of how a certain president perverts people's names with nicknames, you know, like Sleepy Joe. And so using a name respectfully is powerful, and perverting it, which you don't really see here in the play, but can undercut the connection.
Right, right.
I was also thinking that Tamara does what they tell you to do in negotiation theory, which is do interest-based negotiation. Like, you want this, let me try to say what I think your position is and who you are, and then turn that to what I want. So it's a step beyond recognizing the name and saying, here's what I think is good about you, and that's why you're going to agree with me.
I think that's a really good point, because I have a lot of political conversations with my friends who are the opposite political stance of me, and we can have conversations, like civil conversations, and they are, one of my best friends is a Trump supporter and I am not, and we can sit down and talk, like not get mad at each other. And that's exactly what we do, what you just said. We actually, like, that is how we have to have the conversations about the hard things that I agree with that she doesn't, and vice versa. Because if I just flat out say, like, no, that's wrong, then it will be like really, really bad, you know? So it's right. Because another thing that I think that people need to think is that the things that I don't agree with that she does, I don't think that they are actually wrong. I just think they're a different perspective, because we are different people and grew up differently and had different experiences. That doesn't mean that she is wrong, because I don't think my beliefs fit every single person, kind of thing. And I think everyone needs to realize that you know, not, you know, it's a lot to think about. And so I think it is possible to have conversations like that. And I think it's about the type of people that you talk to about it as well. But it is possible.
See, it's when you make the let's say the two-step process of that you're avoiding in these kinds of conversations. You make the two-step process of she's wrong and she's bad. Right. Because then that makes it that creates a quasi-religious opposition.
Because we have to get those two things out of the head, that the people who think differently than you are not wrong and they're not bad. It's just a different way of thinking. And maybe, you know, if you tried to look at why they think that way, you may like understand it better, but that doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
Right.
You know, and I really tried to put myself in some situations of why she agrees with a lot of the things that she does with Trump. And I tried to put myself in a lot of positions of why people are voting for him. And I really did my research on that. And I do had some like understanding of people for that. So, and there's a lot of different like social classes of people voting for him. Like it's very interesting to me. So
I'm
yeah.
I was just going to say, it's like I'm not particularly invested in the two-party division in our
Right.
in our society, right? So
Right.
I don't form these incredibly strong, let's say, quasi-religious feelings on either side of the political divide. But then, of course, it's easy then to just dismiss me as in some way supporting the devil, or whoever that may.
Yeah.
However he or she gets represented. But I think that because what I'm committed to is what I think you're describing, Bella, in its empathy, right?
Yeah.
It's the capacity to think, put yourself as well as you can in the position of someone else to understand why they feel the way that they feel. And it's not to say that that's a sacrifice on your part. That's actually, I think, in some ways, the first step to perhaps engaging in a conversation that might persuade that person to what you think about this particular issue. But you have to open yourself up as well to being persuaded by them.
And my friend did the same thing back. Like she looked at, my side of things and looked at why I would think these certain things. And, I think the more conversation that we have and the more that I share with people that we do this, the more that other people are like, maybe I can like look at it. And it's not saying that you have to like a certain politician or you have to like those certain supporters, but I do think it's important to, maybe like open yourself up to like why don't you actually like them? Is it because you see it on the media? Is it because of what you're like taught to, like, why don't you like really like give me evidence of why you don't like this thing?
But you're bringing us back to Leah's point about the media, right?
Yeah.
And the media of the way in which we communicate, the tools that we rely on, we depend on, we have faith in communicating our ideas and receiving communication, right?
Right.
And so you would think, if we think about the way we're on this particular platform right now, but we think about social media in general, that if the promise or let's say the ideal of these platforms is to bring us together, and I think it's doing a fairly decent job of bringing us together,
Mm-hmm.
why does it seem, or how is it possible that we're more divided, presumably, than we've ever been?
Yeah.
And I think that what Leah identified in her material dependence on the book and the staff illustrates that we can't just have uncritical faith in the media.
Yeah. I actually found a website. Ironically, my brother shared it on Facebook, but my brother's very much like this. He likes to do research and think things through. And it was actually like a whole website about, it shares like policy about candidates and like to do research about candidates. And I immediately like reshared it, and it actually has a quiz about like intricate questions to see like where, and it's a long quiz to like see where you would fall. And it's like a yes or no answer, but then there's like another answer that you can choose that says more information. And then there's like these intricate answers that are like yes, but, no, but, and then you can look at other people's answers that are more intricate, and then you can come up with your own answer. And it really puts you in a category of where you fall politically, because I think there's a lot of people my age specifically who, like we talk about in class, that will not vote because they don't know how to keep up with the election and don't know where they fall politically at all. And I think that's really important to do that. So I think going back to that third question, or is it possible to communicate our pain or express our pain through media? I don't know. I guess in a way that could be pain, because not knowing where you fall politically, like, like you're in stress, you're in turmoil, like everyone's telling you to vote and you're like, I don't know who to vote for. I think there's a lot of people like that.
Right.
There's a lot of stress on that. And especially in my generation, saying like, telling the young people to vote, vote, vote. And I think that website, I just like came across it when my brother reposted that. And I think that was a great way of communication, to say, hey, there's a way to like figure that out. But I'm kind of going on a rant here, but I just wanted to say that, communication through the media is, there is good and bad to it for sure.
Right.
If we're going to go on to that third question, I know I skipped to number 2.
Oh, we don't have to go in any particular order. Go ahead, Martha.
Coming back to the third question, I think an advantage and a disadvantage in the play is that at least the elites share the common text of Ovid's Metamorphosis. So they have the same referent in a way that we don't anymore. So the media have become so fragmented that people can be in a bubble